Hey guys, Mini Freakout here. So, today we're going to be discussing a very popular game. Everybody knows the Diablo series. We're going to be discussing Diablo 3. Now, my brother recently told me that when we were talking about the PvP, when it was going to come out, that usually in a PvP patch for the Diablo games, they usually come out with new classes. So, what we're going to be discussing is which new classes should be in the Diablo 3 series. Now, we already know that they have the Demon Hunter, the Barbarian, the Monk, the Witch Doctor, and the Wizard. 5 classes. Okay, it's not bad. It's no surprise, though, they didn't need to add a few more classes, because 5, that's not enough. There needs to be a few more classes, like other RPGs do. They have more classes. So it's no surprise they're going to be adding more classes this patch. So, everybody loves PvP, of course, and we might discuss that too in this video. So, enjoy the video and watch and see what ideas I come up with for these classes. Alright, so, to start off this video, I'm going to bring up a few classes that I've already come up with. And I've been going over this for a little bit, like tossing around. There's still stuff that are going to be kind of similar. Okay, so, one idea I had was a rogue. You know, a simple class. A rogue is in most RPGs. And Diablo 2, they had a class called the Assassin, in which I'm going to talk about if they should bring that back instead of putting in a rogue. But the rogue would be kind of a stealthy character. You know how the Witch Doctor has Spirit Walk? Well, the rogue would have something along those lines. He would be able to go invisible, but it wouldn't be exactly like Spirit Walk. I mean, going invisible, he'd be able to do it a lot longer, though. Like, I'd say maybe a 5-second, 6-second thing instead of a 2-second, 3-second thing that Spirit Walk does. Now, his invisibility would do some sort of tactic. Like, in Spirit Walk, you can shoot darts. Like, you can use your spells, actually, in Spirit Walk. It doesn't break you out of it. But when the rogue goes invisible, it could last 5-6 seconds, whatever. And I'd say that maybe, like, when you attack a unit, you get out of the invisibility. But what happens is, something Spirit Walk doesn't do, that the rogue's invisibility would do, is it would do more damage. Let's say it just says 200% of your attack damage. And if you go backstab, 250%. So, you get a backstab, even more damage. So, the move would be really strong, and one reason that's like a trademark for a rogue, his stealthiness, his invisibility. Another thing is speed. A rogue, I think, being stealthy needs agility, speed. He needs to be agile. So I was thinking, Spirit Walk increases the Witch Doctor's movement speed, and he goes invulnerable while he's in spirit form. And along the same lines with the rogue, if he had invisibility, he would do the same thing. The rogue, though, he would have a different speed boost. He would activate it, and his speed would be increased. This is more an escape method. I mean, it wouldn't be included in his invisibility. When he goes invisible, he's just going invisible, and he does extra damage when he attacks out of invisibility, unless his invisibility time runs out. Now, the speed bonus, I'd say it would last like 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, kind of like Spirit Walk. So, I think it would make him really fast, and I think that's another trademark for an agile unit, agile character or hero, such as the rogue. Now, the rogue would sort of have his type of dagger-wielding skill, so we'd make a separate weapon like the dagger, a type of dagger, like not the daggers that any unit can use. Like, I mean like a special sort of rogue dagger, kind of like how the monk has those fists that he can use, and he can use the Diablo. He can use, yeah, the claws, the Diablo. The witch doctor can only use the well, he can use other weapons, but that are available to him. But his trademark weapon, is a ceremonial knife, and like his offhand is the mojo. And the barbarian, his belt, like he has certain types of belts just for barbarian. That's what I mean. Now, I think it would specialize, the rogue would specialize in daggers, and I think he would be able to dual wield daggers. And I feel like the rogue would be a type of character, kind of like the demon hunter and the monk, would use dexterity, and like the demon hunter, which I don't know now because attack speed was nerfed. Hopefully they give it a tad bit of a buff, and maybe the demon hunters can use it again, like in crossbows. But they have to use quivers like all the time now because that's like their only source of decent attack speed. Anyway, if they buff the attack speed, yeah, like the rogue and the demon hunter would be using attack speed and dexterity, so he'd be in that class range, attack speed and dexterity. I'd feel like the rogue would also get critical damage, and that's what the demon hunters kind of like too. So I'm comparing the rogue to a lot of different heroes. Now, his skill set of going invisible is kind of like the witch doctor. The type of stats he would get is kind of like the demon hunter, and dexterity is kind of like the monk. And he would get his own set of weapon, like daggers, in my opinion. Now, the rogue, other abilities. Now, his regular, like, I know there's no auto attack in this game, and that's what everybody says. But like his left click move is what I'm trying to say. Like, you know how the witch doctor poison darts? He'd probably use like some sort of slashing ability, like maybe like probably like a scissor slash or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, his left click though, or no, his left click would be that. His right click though, I wouldn't really be sure what his right click would be. I feel like it would be some sort of stun. Like, I feel like he can stun someone if he goes behind them and attacks them. So if he goes invisibly, attacks them from behind, you can right click and it would stun them. Like, it'll actually, maybe he would launch something that would stun a group of air, but a very small, like, group. Now, the rogue, I feel like it's a good idea to add in Diablo 3. Now, we're gonna move on to another class, and that's coming next. Now, what other classes would be a decent choice for Diablo 3? I don't know. I was coming up with an idea like a dark mage. You know, they have the wizard, and I feel like he has more like good abilities, like light. What I mean is, he does not have evil abilities. Like the dark mage would be on the darker side. He had more darker abilities. I mean, yeah, the wizard does have a few of those, but the dark mage specializes in dark abilities. And like the witch doctor, and sort of like the necromancer from Diablo 2, I feel like they would be able to summon some sort of things. Have like, they would be able to summon a creature, like a skeleton, like, you know how the necromancer summons skeletons in Diablo 2, but I really think it would just be something small like that, skeletons. And maybe something bigger than that, how the witch doctor summons a gargantuan, and in Diablo 2 the necromancer summoned a golem, or fire golem, or whatever. The dark mage, I feel like, would summon something bigger, like an arcane shadow or something like that. Like, you know, if anybody sees the wizard in his Archon form, and if you ever play StarCraft and you see the Archon, kind of like that, summon that type of guy. And that'd be kind of a cool kind of ability type for the Dark Mage, and he'd have more dark abilities. He'd probably use intelligence, of course, just like the Witch Doctor and the Wizard. They all use those three classes use intelligence. The Dark Mage would be included intelligence, and that's really intelligence. His one of his simpler left click abilities, I'd say, would be just shooting out like a dark ball. He'd be wielder of like staves, which is like two-handed, or he could be, or in his case, it'd be like one-handed. You know how all the classes, when they wield a bow, it's two-handed, but the Demon Hunter, it's one-handed for him, and he can hold a quiver. But yeah, kind of like that. He'd be able to actually probably wield the stave as a one-handed. This one-handed stave, instead of wielding it two-handed. Like all those staves. And maybe he'd be able to use as an offhand, like he'd be able to use like a spell book, kind of like the wizard. The wizard has an offhand of orbs, and they can use spell books too. And I think the Dark Mage would be able to use that. They should change it where they can make spell books like that. And the Dark Mage, I feel like he can summon like a simple amount of things, not like Witch Doctor or Necromancer, like how much they can summon, how the Necromancer in Diablo 2 can summon. So the Dark Mage would be a more advanced version of the Necromancer, but simpler version when summoning things, and more into the magic depth of like firing bolts, firing beams, kind of like that. And I feel like he'd be like the Dark Mage, fire like dark beams, psi beams, like dark blasts, dark balls. Dark balls. But anyway, maybe they would use a teleport, kind of like the wizard. The wizard has a teleport. But going back to the Dark Mage's like abilities, his left click, I said, would be like shooting a dark ball, like his simpler left clicks, maybe with the runes shooting 3 at once. But yeah, instead of that, the right click, maybe shooting a dark beam, kind of like how I realized I played the wizard a little bit, just a little bit though, where he has this ice beam, or she has this ice beam that they shoot, and that's his right click. And I feel like that would be for the Dark Mage too. So Dark Mage would be similar in the wizard's form, and he would summon things kind of like a Necromancer, like different things that'd be kind of like the same as Necromancers, but different things from the Witch Doctor. So he'd be like the Witch Doctor also, and the Necromancer from Diablo 2. Now, that's what I think about the Dark Mage, of like a Dark Mage. And like his one ability would be summoning things like skeletons, like kind of like this Witch Doctor and summoning zombie dogs is one ability. As his 4 ability, he can summon a gargantuan, and as his 4 ability for the Dark Mage, that'd be like his Archon kind of thing, his number 4 ability. His 2 and 3 ability would be more like a slow or something. I'm sure he would have some disables, like a slow. He'd have a silence probably. I feel like a Dark Mage would have a silence, and those would be in the 2 or 3 ability slots. And that's my opinion of a Dark Mage. And I think a Dark Mage, or Dark Wizard, whatever you want to call it, should be added to the Diablo 3 game. And now moving on to a next class that should be in this game. Now, a lot of people did like the Assassin, but then you would not be able to add a class such as the Rogue. So people wouldn't think the Rogue and the Assassin should be in the same game. unless they change the assassin up a little bit. Maybe bringing the assassin back wouldn't be such a bad idea, but maybe changing him up a bit. Now, the Demon Hunter is kind of like an archer, but he's called the Demon Hunter. He's not called the Archer, so we're not going to add anything like that. So how the rogue would be a knife-wielding character, I feel like the assassin should use another weapon other than knives. How just kind of like the witch doctor trait of wielding ceremonial daggers. But they wouldn't really... Yeah. I feel like they would be made more of what Diablo 2 portrayed them as magi. So I feel like they'd be a more type of mage with a mix of rogue. So 2-in-1 kind of thing. Like a wizard and... Yeah. I'd feel like they could do melee abilities and wizardry abilities, but different than the wizard's abilities and different than a rogue's abilities. Now, there's been a bit of like what should be also in this game, and that's a few of the ideas I have so far. So we're going to move on to PvPs, discussing how PvP is going to work. And I said I might discuss it, and I've decided I'm going to discuss it in this video. But I'm going to make a part 2 video.